This next song requires a boot. If you're one of those people that finds the sort of bashing of religion and stuff tiresome or offensive, just give me 5 more minutes. Life is like an ocean voyage, and our bodies are the ships. And without a moral compass, we would all be cast adrift. So to keep us on our bearings, the Lord gave us a gift. And like most gifts you get, it was a book. I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go, because the good book is a book and it is good and it's a book. I know the good book's good because the good book says it's good. I know the good book knows it's good because a really good book would. You wouldn't cook without a cookbook, and I think it's understood. You can't be good without a good book because it's good and it's a book and it is good for cooking. I tried to read some other books, but I soon gave up on that. The paragraphs ain't numbered and they complicate the facts. I can't read Harry Potter because they're worshipping false gods and that. And Dumbledore's a poofter, and that's bad because it's not good. Morality is written there in simple white and black. I feel sorry for you heathens, got to think about all that. Good is good and evil's bad, and goats are good and pigs are crap. You'll find which one is which in the good book, because it's good and it's a book and it's a book. Yeah, I had a cat, she gave birth to a litter. The kittens were adorable and they made my family laugh, but as they grew they started misbehaving. So I drowned the little fuckers in the bath. When the creatures in your care start being menaces, the answers can be found right there in Genesis chapter 6 verse 5 to 7. Yeehaw! Swing your partner by the hand, have a baby if you can. But if the voices in your head say to sacrifice your kid to satiate your loving God's fetish for dead baby blood, it's simple faith the book demands. So raise that knife up in your hands. Before the good book made us good, there was no good way to know if a thing was good or not that good, or kind of touch and go. So God decided he'd give writing allegoric prose a go. And so he wrote a book, and it was generally well received. The Telegraph said this God is reminiscent of the Norse. The Times said kind of turgid, but I liked a bit with horses. The Mail said lots of massacres, a violent tour de force. If you only read one book this year, then this one is a book, and it is good, and it's a book. Yeehaw! Swing your daughter by the hand, but if she gets raped by a man and refuses then to marry him, stone her to death. You just close your eyes and block your ears to the accumulated knowledge of the last 2,000 years. Then morally, guess what? You're off the hook. And thank Christ you only have to read one book. Just because the book's contents were written generations hence by hairy desert-dwelling gents squatting in their dusty tents. Just because what heaven said was said before they'd leavened bread. Just because Jesus couldn't read doesn't mean that we should need manipulating human genes to alleviate pain or fight disease. When deciding whether it's wrong or right to help the dying let go of life, or to stop a pregnancy when it's just a tiny blastocyst, there's no reason why we should take a look at any other book but the good book, cause it's good and it's a book and it's a book and it's quite good. Whoa. That's fucked. Yeah, good is good and evil's bad, and kids get killed when God gets mad. You better take a good look at the good book.
May the 12th.
Bible sucks.
So, I don't know what you want me to say. All right, what's up, guys? Hey, how's it going? I'm the Realistic Nihilist. I have a YouTube channel. I'm just going to plug away right now because Strife said my name. There you go. It's your turn to plug, man. Go.
Who?
You,
Me?
it's your turn to plug.
Okay, there's some huge echo going on in here, so I'm trying to figure out. I don't know.
Turn off the sound on the Von Live TV stream.
Oh, I guess so. Okay. Exactly. All right, I just had the sound on the Von Live TV. All right. So are we supposed to make introductions?
Hi everybody, I'm Atheism TV. I'm the founder of the channel, the YouTube channel by the same name, and we have a big organization. We bring you daily news shows and all sorts of other videos as well. And that's pretty much it. And I was invited and I accepted because I didn't have anything better to do. I could have spent my time with my mother, but I decided to be with you guys instead.
Good choice.
Long story.
I am the PipeSmokingSkeptic, and I make videos on YouTube. My account is IBMan123, and I just mess around because I'm cool like that.
I already made my plug. I don't need to make any more plugs. I already plugged my shit, man. Unless you want the whole show to be about me, I'm cool with that.
That's the name of my YouTube channel as well. If you'd like to check it out, yay, down with creationism and fundamentalism.
We're all heathens.
Yeah.
We're all gonna writhe in suffering agony because we suggest that there should be evidence for people's claims. Terrible, terrible paradigm in which we live.
How dare we?
Right. So let's talk about the Bible, Strife. You're supposed to be the moderator. Let's do this. You're not supposed to have dead air on a show, Strife.
So maybe I can say something?
Yes.
A book of facts or the rantings of madmen. That's going to be a very easy topic.
That's.
I think we're all pretty much decided where that's concerned.
Okay, let me tell you about my day, all right? I've had a very interesting day today because it was Mother's Day and I was invited to a church, actually 2 churches. And I went to one of them. One is like an evangelical church. And there was a pastor there telling his story about his mother and his mother-in-law, and it was really, I'm not even sarcastic, it was really touching and brought a tear to my eye. And then right after that, he used his mother, or mothers in general, to bring up his political views or his church's political views, which I thought was disgusting.
That sounds like a very American thing to do.
Yeah, well, I live in Canada, but this
Oh,
pastor was
dang it.
actually from the USA, as per the huge paddle that he brought with him. It was a huge rubber thing. I swear to you, it must have weighed 10 pounds or more. I'm not sure, but this was used to punish children.
What?
He brought that with him to talk with people in the church on Mother's Day, and I was like, what?
What the fuck?
A huge rubber paddle to basically punish children for anything, you know. Just like, this is what mothers should keep at home.
Did you know that's actually
discipline their
illegal
children.
in Canada? That's illegal.
Yeah.
It's against the law to spank your children with an implement. You have to use your open hand. You can only do it like when they're under the age of 2 or something. No belts, no paddles, no sticks. It's against the law. It's actual abuse, and it's a punishable crime. It should be a punishable crime. A 10-pound rubber paddle? You fucking kidding me?
It was huge.
Oh my God.
The first thing I thought is, are you trying to compensate for something?
You take the little fucker, and if he's not listening to you, you just beat him into fucking submission. And you tell
That's
him,
fundamentalism for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
hey man, they're just modeling after God. You know, you get angry, you turn some people into salt, you fucking give them boils and shit. You know, but
You dump the rest in fire forever.
No, those are not the punishments that are ordered by God for your own children. But you are supposed to give them the rod.
That's what it says in the Old Testament.
What is a rod exactly? Are there
Just what it sounds like. Great big stick.
But are there specific dimensions? Does it have to be a rod?
No.
Or is it?
Just beat him with a rod. Pick up a rod and just beat that little shit.
But
You know, it's funny.
like, is a cane a rod?
Hey, whatever you want it to be, as long as you're obeying God.
What about like a fishing rod?
Hey, that'd work.
What if you just have to hook him? What if God was like foreseeing the entire time, and he was just talking about you gotta go fishing for the little fuckers when they were disobeying you?
You know, it's funny looking from both sides of the fence. You know, like from when I was a Christian and now, and just the different ways that I think now, and the way that I thought then. And you know, I just took that passage for granted. You know, oh, that must be the best way. And I didn't use a paddle or anything. I just spanked my kids. You know, regular whatever. But then, you know, after I actually started questioning the Bible, then I actually did what I should have done to begin with, which should have been common sense, which was actually look into what research has been done about what punishments work best.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting. You know, there's this theoretical bullshit. I don't know if you guys know his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got awesome stuff, but his mom actually wrote a book about how to raise children. I don't know why but that comes to mind because it's like, yeah, you don't always have to discipline your child by fucking hitting them. I know I never worked.
No.
I know that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I got you.
Well, I know that it never worked for me. I know that every time my dad hit me, I was always just like, well, fuck you. I'm going to do something different. Reminds me of the movie Good Will Hunting, where he says he chose to pick the wrench to get beaten with, and he said, Robin Williams turns to him and says, well, I would have gone with like the belt or something, and he says, why'd you go with the wrench? And he responds, because fuck him, that's why.
Yeah.
And that's,
I found that with my kids when I was a fundamentalist Christian, I mean, you spank them not only because, you know, it's hard to discipline little kids, and sometimes they need a little, you know, swat on the backside, but when they're getting older and you realize, and I was starting to distance myself from religion after my deconversion especially, realizing how horrible it is as first line of defense. What it is a reaction. They do something, it annoys you, you get angry and you hit them and you're angry. Everybody knows this, and that you can't do that you shouldn't treat kids like that, just like you shouldn't treat adults like that. And you're right, you should look at the actual research that's out there, what actually works for raising kids. There's people that study this stuff, and there's really good information out there. And You don't want your kids growing up to hate you or being bitter about it or worse.
Yeah. Now, earlier there was a question, what constitutes a rod? There's the there's this
The old rule of thumb, eh?
there's this book by I forget the name, but it's called to raise up a child, I think is the name, and or to train up a child, and it's basically a book about how to discipline your children. And every time I hear a story on the news about a dead child, it's like there's always that book in the library of the parents. But the guy who wrote that book said that a good rod would be a at least quarter inch thick PVC piping for plumbing.
It's just sad.
Yeah. So
But hatred and bigotry masked as love. Yeah, they call it gay to straight therapy. All kinds of, well, there's no standardized therapy. It's just some fundamentalists pulling shit out of their ass. Sorry. Go ahead.
I just don't know. I don't even know how you can feel good about yourself when you like. I know my dad always had like some sort of mental trauma going on when he had to spank me or he thought it was the right thing to do. I never experienced this firsthand, but my stepmom would always come in and tell me like, oh, he feels really bad about doing it, and I'm sitting there with a childish mindset going, and why the fuck was he doing it? Why would you do something that really made you feel bad?
yeah. Makes no sense. But yeah, and earlier there was a mention of scientific studies and stuff like that. And I mean, these studies have been done, dozens and dozens of them, and they're all showing the same thing, that physical punishment, one, is damaging, and two, does not work. Children still do their thing that they want to do, but they do it in the parents' backs while they're not watching.
Is that is that to train up a child book? Is that like a fundamentalist kind of book? Or?
Oh yes, there's lots of Bible verses in there, and to be fair, the Bible does support this book.
Yeah, you know, I can't speak because I'm not a parent. But from my experience with my nieces and nephews, and I know this is a really tertiary experience, so I'm not telling people how to raise their kids or anything. But what I always did to my nieces and nephews is I just questioned them into exhaustion. They didn't even want to talk to me anymore. This is the point where like, oh man, I'll just do what you say just to get you to shut up, man. Stop asking me questions. I don't want to think about it too much. Like that always worked for me. My nieces, I go over there and they love me and they listen to just about everything I say. So I don't know.
A lot of people are horrible communicators, and so they become parents, and they don't know how to communicate these things to their children, and they end up just spanking them out of frustration. They also get stuck in the trap of wanting to make their kids into something. They have a vision for them, especially if it's religiously motivated. You have to make them follow a religious path because, I mean, their eternal destiny depends on them accepting Jesus or whatever, and praying the right prayer and repenting of their sins. And so and not being a certain way, not being gay, not being this, not drinking alcohol, not watching certain movies or saying certain words or having sex. And they have to mold their kids. And so they get extremely frustrated. And so they don't know how to communicate. They're angry, they're frustrated, they're bound up by religious fundamentalism, and they end up just trying to beat them into it, and quite often, more often than not, driving them away.
Yes.
Does anybody know any Bible verses that explicitly talk about free will? Because I don't know any. I think that's kind of just a philosophical.
I think it's Ephesians 2:8 and 9. not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. It's that it's a gift, and that you can accept this gift. It is a free will idea.
Well, but there's no like explicit. It's not very explicit. That seems like you kind of have to take the context. You have to take that out of the context, because to me that doesn't necessarily imply free will, or does it?
The whole idea of the gospel is preaching to people that they need to repent of their sins. It puts the ball in their court. Whether free will is spoken of specifically, the ball is in the person's court. You're ultimately responsible for the decisions that you make, and you're ultimately judged and condemned for making the wrong ones. Even though the supremacy of God and the sovereignty of God is an overarching theme, people are held responsible for their own decisions. But man has free will and is held accountable for their choices.
But isn't even teaching the Bible or giving people sermons or even making them knowledge, isn't that an infringement kind of on free will? Isn't that kind of like, it's not really free, it's kind of coercive. Oh man, it reminds me of the non-stamp collector.
Well, you have to understand where the Bible's concerned, where theology is concerned. It's actually quite a simplistic way of looking at these issues. I mean, science and philosophy have looked at these issues in many complicated ways, and there have been many really good debates. But it's really essentially very simple where theology is concerned. I mean, God is sovereign; He's in charge. Man is sinful. He does bad things, and he's responsible for them and must repent of them. It's really, there's no nuance. It's all straightforward. All the nuance is in the scientific and philosophical debates outside of religious theology. Well, I mean, there's even a debate whether we have free will or not, and whether we're just the products of our biological programming. Oh, religious meaning. Well, it's that you have a responsibility in Christianity, to accept Jesus, to be saved, to repent of your sins, or you go to hell for not making the right decision and making the wrong decisions.
Yeah, there's a couple of passages in the Old Testament also that talk about free will. Deuteronomy 30:19. I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life. So, and then there's Joshua 24:15. Choose you this day whom ye will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Basically, you have the choice between, the dark side of the force or the good side of the force. And
it's funny because if it were more concrete, like the analogy refers to, like I've laid before you life and death, so the only reason there are philosophical debates or theological debates is because if God actually did lay it out like that, if it were really fucking obvious, no one's gonna choose. Like they're just like, here, I'm gonna put two platters in front of you. One of them's got a bunch of poop on it, and one of the other one's got a big nice steak on it. Which one are you gonna eat? No one's gonna be like, yeah, what the, if it were concrete, it's not really, just like, and then he has to tell you. That's like the server just be like, now choose the steak. I'd be like, dude, I don't need you to fucking tell me that.
I have another related point. Do you guys think that there is such a thing as free will in heaven?
Well, theologically, free will is a product of the fall. It's a product of Adam and Eve eating the fruit in the Garden of Eden, and because it's the choices laid out for us, because God doesn't want, theologically, God doesn't want us to be make our own decisions. He doesn't want us to be independent. He wants us to be at His feet, kneeling in worship. This is why we were made, is the biblical standpoint. And Bod to Bits in the comments here, he was right. The phrase free will does not appear in the Bible. And Adam and Eve did not have the wisdom to allow them free will. They were programmed by God. They were innocents. So theologically, like I say, there's really not much nuance. In Revelation, it says in heaven, after all your family and friends that didn't believe in Jesus are thrown into the lake of fire, screaming and suffering by your God, God closes that door up, and it's like, okay, then we don't have to worry about them anymore. And the Bible says, he shall wipe all the tears from your eyes. And so you won't be sad anymore. So apparently... Exactly. And I was saying this the other day to somebody who's like, you know what, if there is no heaven, if there is no eternity, then life is absurd. And I said, well, what's more absurd? What's more absurd is living forever as a servant to a God, and you don't have feelings in it. Mm-hmm. You're not human anymore. You don't have sadness. You don't have happiness. Yeah. That's absurd. That's more absurd. Couldn't say so because the Bible's really not that complicated. Human emotions. Like an old, angry... Yeah, just jump right in.
Atheism TV, you proposed an awesome question because that's a big dilemma there. According to the Bible, and according to a lot of theologians, the whole purpose of free will was so that we could choose to love him, right? But there were some negative, unfortunate consequences that were inevitable, such as some people would choose to not follow him, and that would cause sin, and that would sin always leads to death and pain and whatnot. And so if you have free will in heaven, then doesn't that necessitate the exact same thing? And if not, then why, if there was a way around that, then why didn't he do that in the first place?
Yes. Now, I did talk with a few Christians, and they pretty much all gave me the same answer that yes, there is free will in heaven, and the proof of that is that at one point you had some angels that rejected God, and then they were thrown out of heaven. And I thought, this is interesting because I have this idea, this hypothesis, that I don't know if you guys are aware of something in statistics called the law of rare events. Basically, it says that if you have something that happens really, really rarely, but you have enough samples, an infinity of samples, and eventually it will happen.
Yes.
So
inevitably, people are going to sin, and there's going to be.
If it's very rare that you have people in heaven that sin, eventually all of them will, and that means eventually everybody will go to hell.
Or have some sort of it'll become another Earth, basically, at the very least. I mean, sin and death and suffering in heaven. So it's not heaven anymore.
Yeah.
If I were an apologist and I were put in that position, I would actually use the same analogy I used earlier. And I think this is kind of what they do. I think, okay, so you say that, do people have free will in heaven? And you have to say, well, yeah, because you'd be undermining your own argument if you didn't. But what I laid out, the stipulations, are like, okay, yeah, but choosing not to like worship God and obey God is just so much more inferior to actually doing it. So you'd never actually make that choice in heaven because you'd be so enamored by loving God because it would be so concrete and apparent at that time that you would only choose to do that. So I guess try to think of a rebuttal against that, and that's because that's the best one I could come up to if I put myself in the hypothetical standpoint of a Christian that you asked that question to.
I think that was addressed a little bit earlier when somebody said, that basically in heaven there's this special condition in which sin is not possible. So why didn't God do this like to us humans? Put us in this condition. Well, Adam and Eve were human before they committed the first sin.
So the only answer that I could hypothesize in that situation would be saying that your earthly journey is a journey of faith. So you need to you're basically being tested here. You need to have it on faith, and he doesn't do that because of the whole free will thing. He wants you to choose of your own volition, that kind of thing. But he wants you to obscurely choose from a weird and consequential set of variables. I don't know. That's a really hard question to answer, honestly.
Theologically, there's always this problem, always in any kind of theology that supposes free will as opposed to sovereignty of God, that supposes that man has a responsibility to believe the message that is presented. Because in history, we can see whole civilizations that rose and fell outside of any influence to, Christianity, for instance, any form of Christianity. Look at the Americas, or the South American and Central American empires, where they rose and fell completely outside. The Aztecs, the Incas, they didn't have any influence until very late. I mean, millions of people. Yeah. But millions of people were born, lived their entire lives, and died without ever having the opportunity to hear. And so the theological question is, are the heathen lost? Now, I was part of a fundamentalism that said, yes, the heathen are lost. And I know there is other brands of Christianity that says, no, the heathen are not responsible. They're not going to go to hell unless, of course, they hear the gospel and reject it.
Saitan Bergenkate actually says that. That's why he advocates being a missionary, because he says that they're all going to
hell. Well, that's the thing, though. Psi 10 says they are going to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No, other sects, but no, I believed exactly that those that haven't heard, they need to be told, because they're going to die and go to hell anyways.
What a fucked up situation.
It really is. I mean, how can you say your God is just?
Exactly.
Well,
it's sadistic and disgusting.
He says that, well, all men know enough of the glory of God to be responsible. But
his same theology, and I was part of it, and I can tell you for a fact, his same theology says, you know what, yes, the nature shows you that God exists. You have no excuse to not believe that God exists. However, nature doesn't have the gospel. Nature doesn't tell you who Jesus is, and that's what you have to know to escape hell. So he's contradicting himself in his own theology and his own message. You can't.
To me, it's so infuriating to hear Christians tell me what I know or what I think. It's just so condescending and makes me mad. And when I hear Saitan starting to say, "Oh, everybody knows God exists," I just want to.
But and I heard in a debate with him just recently, somebody was telling him that I forget exactly when it was, about him making a choice at some point in time to believe what he believes, and he says no, he never made a conscious choice. He says, who are you to tell me what I believe, when that's exactly what his shtick is.
It was with Truth Surge, and it was on Google Hangouts, and what happened is Sai's defense was that, well, I can say it because I know, and you've given up knowledge. The guy always does that shit. He always says you've given up knowledge. He's like, oh, that's my little niche.
Presuppositional apologetics is like the Chewbacca defense. Do you know the Chewbacca defense?
No, but it sounds entertaining.
So the Chewbacca defense is a joke in South Park, and I encourage you guys to check it out. and it's basically an argument that makes so little sense that the jury is very, very confused, and they just acquit the accused.
No, they just acquit the accused.
Yeah, they just acquit him because they're just really, really confused by it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's what I think. I think the biggest problem for anybody who's a biblical literalist is taking the failings of the Bible and just like, what do you do with that, man?
Cognitive dissonance.
What do you do with the fact that, okay, they're talking about the Tower of Babel and how people have communicated so well that they were getting close to heaven, and God was just like, fuck that. They can't come here or there. I have to invite them into my shit.
Well,
and we're taking spaceships up past the atmosphere. Like, how the fuck does anybody... Yeah, but what do you do? How do you reconcile your biblical literalism with that?
I can tell you how. And it's quite strange. I also went to church this morning with my family, and it was like prophecy day, and they were talking about the end times and how when Jesus comes back and raptures the church into heaven, and the unsaved are left on earth, and the evil atheists who are part of the last days apostasy, who are just deceived by the devils and demons and stuff. And it illustrated in my mind very clearly how, well, Galileo said that God wrote two books, one to show you how to go to heaven and one to show you how the heavens go. He was referring to the Bible and nature. And he saw a discrepancy, and he was showing the church in his day the discrepancy between the established fundamentalist beliefs of the heavens and the world and the universe and the actual observation of science. And what happens is when your beliefs come into conflict with this other, with your observation, with the science, you throw the science out, because what you've done is you've taken a worldview, and you take the Bible. It was what explains everything. This is what explains existence. And what's happened in the last few hundred years, we've made scientific discoveries about biology, about evolution, about cosmology, about genetics, all kinds of stuff, and it's contradicted fundamentalist views. And these fundamentalists reject all of that, almost all of that, and they prefer
you always tell me that, but how do they fucking do, like, what happens in their brains that
you just do it? God of the Bible, yeah, man's word or God's word. Seriously, you have thrown your lot in with a worldview, and any information that contradicts your worldview, you just reject it again. You just reject it.
Well,
it doesn't matter what it is.
Let me just put it this way, okay? Your own mother. This is Mother's Day, so that's good. Your own mother comes to see you and says, "Hey, there's a squirrel in the backyard." Is she telling the truth? Well, it's your mother, so she's constantly she's been telling you the truth. So there's no reason for you not to believe her about the squirrel in the backyard. Now, if your mother brings you to church every single Sunday, and the people over there that she trusts drill things into your brain, of course you're going to believe it. You're not going to
That's the way we're wired.
You're not going to ask any questions. You're just going to believe it because these are trustworthy people.
But I don't even know what to say to that. How do you just deny a fact? How do you deny?
It's as simple as just doing it.
like, okay, let's put Bible thumping wing nut in here hypothetically. Let's say that hypothetically he's in here right now. What's the answer that he gives when I ask him how he reconciles the Tower of Babel with the fact that we've flown, over out of the atmosphere? The fact that we've observed the earth from what do you think?
The Bible says it. It's God's word, and it's true. You see, you reject other facts through cognitive dissonance because your beliefs must be true. They can't be false. Everything, your whole life depends on these religious facts to be true. And so somebody comes along and says, well, there's these facts here. They look interesting, and they also seem to contradict what you believe.
Yeah.
Well, you
just
say no.
Cognitive dissonance and compartmentalization. Is that the word you say that?
Compartmentalization.
Thank you. Those are very powerful.
And confirmation bias. Belief systems are built on confirmation bias. It's the most important engine.
I can't understand how you bring yourself to that. I don't, like, what happens in the mind? What happens to your identity when you're factioned by realization? When you're forced into a factioning of your observation, like, do you assume that your senses are lying to you? Do you assume that what you think is not true at that point in time? Like the same.
You don't see things. You don't see things that contradict your belief.
Hold on a second. The same gotcha that you put them in when you talk about their morality. You say, I wouldn't, would you throw me into hell for disobeying you for eternity? And they say no, and you say your morality is superior to your God's. That's like that's what you tell them. And
yeah.
How do you faction yourself like that when you come to that? How do you look at that? Do you assume?
When I say that to a fundamentalist, the only reaction I ever get is they shake their head, and they don't really have words. Because what can you say? That's a moral gotcha. I mean, your God would burn me forever, but you wouldn't. Your morality is far superior. And I've never got an answer, but they can't. They can't mentally face it. They can't turn and face that. And everything because if they did, they would have to face all the questions. And the same thing I said when I wrote it down when I was deconverting. I had swept all kinds of questions under the rug. All kinds of doubts, all kinds of questions, all kinds of facts, all kinds of things. And each little bit that comes along, you can reject a bit of information, but you can't reject it all in one big go. But so I swept every little bit under this rug of I'm not going to look over there anymore.
Same for me.
Yeah. And I eventually had to.
Well,
yeah. And then I clearly remember one day I was approached by I was a believing Christian at the time, and I was approached by somebody, and we talked about evolution, and I told them that the complexity argument, where if you find a watch on a beach, blah blah blah, and he's like, yeah, but your watch is not alive, and that I was stunned, and my reaction was not, oh, that's interesting, I should look more into that. No, it was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like we have this, we had this mental block, like that just completely blocked out any critical thinking. We could think critically up to a certain point, and then when it got to something that could possibly sever our religious beliefs, yes, then it was like just blank. Like, no, can't go there. It was unconscious.
They're unconvincing, aren't they? Yeah. Do you know why? They make no sense because nobody is convinced into their religious belief systems by those arguments. You sign on to a belief system, and then you go in search of arguments that support it. And that's why those arguments make sense to the believer, and they don't make sense to people outside of their system because
it's a confirmation bias.
It's confirmation bias.
What the thing is that I've never been able to do that. I've never had that. I've never been able to sweep anything under the rug, because the second I can't answer something, it festers in me, and like, because I don't deny. I don't know. I guess I don't know. For some reason, it's impossible for me to deny the information I come into contact with. If I am on the fence, I will get off the fucking fence. I won't just stay there.
It's more than that. And you know how creationists always say, well, you know that evidence for evolution that you have, that can be interpreted to support creation as well. You know, and we laugh at that. We're like, that's ridiculous. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But you know what? It's not that they're completely ignoring the evidence. It's that they're reinterpreting it to fit as far as they can. Well, yeah, they take the evidence, they force it into their belief system. But that's... Yeah, well, they just hunt and pick out little bits of the scientific information, like that support irreducible complexity and things like that. And people harp on to, well, look at the Cambrian explosion. Life just kind of seemed to pop into existence in an instant. When it's 20 to 30 million years, there was huge change. They don't. Well, 20 to 30 to 70, I think. There's been different. Yeah. And it's that one place. It's a tiny bit of the fossil record that was possible out of all, but they just take a little bit of information and they, through confirmation bias, they say, oh, look, there's our beliefs. It fits in right there.
You know, there's something that you said earlier in this conversation, and you said the Ken Ham thing. Well, who do you believe? It's man's word or is it God's word, right? And you said that that's their little argument that they fall back on. And the thing about that is every fundamentalist I've ever met, that I've ever actually talked to, admittedly accepts that the Bible was written by man. The only stipulation is they think it was inspired by God, but you have man's word to say that it was inspired by God. Yeah,
well, I think he's saying, but how do they know that it was inspired by God?
It's still man's word. You're saying man's word that you don't take. You don't take man's word into account, but you do because man's word is giving you God's word. What the fuck are we talking about?
That's where a fundamentalist like Cy Ten Bergenkate or William Lane Craig would say, well, the reason I know, sure, the Bible says that all Scripture is given by inspiration of God, and you say, well, yeah, the Bible would say that, wouldn't it? And they would say, well, I know because of the Holy Spirit. I know because God bears witness to me, and it's faith. And
William
Lane
Lane Craig said that too.
Yeah, that's what they say, and that's what fundamentalists in that Christian fundamentalism says. It's you know because, well, I mean.
Oh fuck!
I know because my ego.
Fuck!
What's going on?
Fuck!
What's going on?
Strife, what the fuck?
I fucking was muted for the whole time.
That's okay.
You were talking? Oh,
Yes, because I
No,
was
no,
not muted on Skype, but I
That was fine.
Fuck! Why didn't someone in the chat tell me? Fuck!
No, we had the best conversation we ever had.
The good thing is at least I have my Skype recorder, but still, it's
kidding.
bullshit.
You're gonna have to go in and find out where your audio was because you
At
and then put it in there.
1950. It was 1950 hours, so it was 7:50 when I finally turned it back on.
Oh man.
So where were we?
When they say oh it's their feeling, it's like, okay, so you don't deny any feeling you have, and then you just keep pushing them. I would keep pushing them. I wouldn't let William Lane Craig get away with that. I wouldn't let him off the hook. Once he said, oh well, it's just my feeling, I would say, okay, I would start giving him some optical illusion tests, you know?
You know, when a believer tells me, I just choose to believe it. I choose to believe in God. I choose to believe there's a heaven. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, unless they're interfering with, unless it's hate the homo week for them, or whether it's science is the bad guy, or defending rape and genocide in the New Testament. I don't have a problem with somebody wanting to believe that or believing it in their own personal lives. I mean, nobody believes correctly. There's no way to believe, but and so when somebody's honest, somebody says, I just choose to believe in God, and it comes right down to faith. It comes right down to I just choose it. Fine, I'm not going to argue with that. I don't believe there's a God, and I think I can prove that God of the Bible doesn't exist, but I don't have a problem with people believing it.
Yeah, me neither. It's just when it comes down to problems with the separation of church and state or mistreatment of children, that's when I have a problem.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like freedom.
Fundamentalism really does harm people. I was having a chat with a friend of mine on Facebook who's also come out of the same fundamentalism. Actually, somebody who was in the youth group that I was the youth pastor of before I deconverted, and I was a real fundamentalist asshole. I mean, really. I mean, we were joking about the awful things that the hypocrisy. We get together as youth and let's watch a movie. Let's watch, we can't watch that movie. It's too violent. And the other person's like, let's watch this movie. Oh, that movie promotes premarital sex. No, we can't watch that. Oh, that movie has too much swearing in it. So we watch some fucking Way of the Master bullshit. And then we would go home and we'd all watch these movies in our personal lives. But we just wouldn't watch them. I mean, seriously, you're condemning yourself and everybody around you, and you're just a jerk to everybody.
You're missing half of the world, practically.
Oh, it's awful. And you treat other people badly, and it's just stupid.
But by the way, earlier we were talking about confirmation bias and people ignoring, things that they see. So there's this little gem in the Bible that I always like to quote when Christians deny that they are being that they are ignoring all the data that we provide to them, and then I always tell them, well, your Bible tells you that you should ignore anything that doesn't go along with God. Like, no, it doesn't. So I always bring them to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 20 and 21. Timothy, guard what you have been entrusted to your care. Turn away from the godless chatter and the opposing ideas of what is falsely called knowledge or science, depending on your translation, which some have professed, and in doing so have departed from their faith. So that's a really interesting quote saying basically, block your ears and sing la la la. Close your eyes, and that's it.
Well, that's what people, even my friends and family, they consider me to have been deceived by doctrines of devils, that I have apostatized and left the faith and wasn't saved in the first place, wasn't a true Christian for 20 years, and that I'm going to burn in hell. I mean, I was told that by the sermon in church this morning, that I was part of the atheist apostasy of the last days, led by the high priest Richard Dawkins.
Has anybody noticed that there is a rise of...
Oh, crap, we lost Realistic.
Oh.
He'll be back.
Yeah, I know, but he's the one who has Skype Premium. And I still can't fucking believe I was fucking muted for... Go ahead.
It's okay, we can keep talking. What was that?
Has anybody noticed that there just seems to be this rise of this attitude of take the country, as far as the U.S. at least, take the country for Jesus type attitude? And it's getting, seems like it's getting louder, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah, as the young people are falling away from religion more and more, and atheism is becoming larger and larger, they're getting more vocal and more violent. There's this real kickback against atheism, and what's that famous quote?
I kind of think it's kind of like let's see here, kind of like Star Wars, like the Empire kind of thing. Like the rebels, kind of like the like they think that these razzle-rousers, the people who are still fundamentalists, think that these young kids are the razzle-rousers. So if they attack the razzle-rousers, the ones that are the big shots in the group, I guess, they would eventually cause them to fall away, and everyone else would start believing again and shit, I guess. My guess.
Well, I admit it's kind of scary because it seems like we've just made so much progress in just the last 60 years, and I do not want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to
exactly
arresting people for blasphemy laws.
Camera's back up.
Yeah, blasphemy laws, they're a real nightmare. You have them in many Muslim countries, and they are, well, in Bangladesh recently there was this huge uproar. Some fundies went in the streets and demanded blasphemy laws, and they used violence and they destroyed stuff just to get some bloggers hanged.
And fundamentalism will
Oh,
do that.
you're talking about the Egyptian bloggers, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentalism in any stripe, Islamic, Christian. When you look at Christian fundamentalism that burned heretics for centuries, burned witches for thousands of years. I mean, it's just, and Islamic fundamentalism is still killing people in the streets. I mean, and probably will for a long time.
North Carolina scares me the most.
Why's that?
Because just the fact that some North Carolina government officials are willing to take this bold step of, fuck the First Amendment.
Yeah.
That's really, really scary. I mean, who else is going to follow suit?
The thing is, though...
And before we know it, we don't have rights anymore.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, what happened in Carolina?
In North Carolina, I didn't even know about that. What exactly happened? They just had a bunch of Christians get together and petition to remove the First Amendment with the Constitution or something.
What was it? They want to say that the First Amendment only applies to the federal government, that it doesn't apply.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to pass a bill that it doesn't apply to the state government and that the state can establish an official state religion.
Yeah.
And if they can do
that,
I mean,
Can you
what else can
imagine?
they do?
It's funny.
I don't think they'll actually do it, but
they're ignoring the jurisprudence, so that's not gonna fly.
Well, it's funny because that's the same. I bet they're all conservatives. I don't know this for a fact, but I would bet that they're all conservatives. And the funny thing about that, it was a conservative, I think it was a congressman that said it didn't matter that Colorado legalized marijuana because it'll still be illegal on a federal level and we'll still go in there and fuck them up. You know, it's funny because they probably say hell yeah to that guy, but but fuck federal laws because it only applies in the state as far as whatever we want is concerned. It's so funny. It's so silly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's hypocritical is the word.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know how you can look at it. I don't know how you can look at it and be like, what? This is what I'm talking about. I remember you were talking about how you just let people go who if they say they want to believe and you say you don't have a problem with that. And I guess I don't essentially have a problem with that, but eventually they're gonna not want to talk to me because I'll keep questioning it. It doesn't stop as far as I'm concerned with the questioning thing.
It depends because I think a real friend will value you for who you are and being honest and there's people that if they're going to believe one thing and I'm going to believe another and we're both going to be honest and open and be able to talk honestly with each other, then if they believe in God or whatever, that's fine. I don't need to convince them that God doesn't exist. What I need to convince them of is that they should not be bigoted against homosexuals. They should not undercut science education and slander genetics and evolution and things like that. I mean, and human rights and free speech and all the rest. But I'm not on a campaign against God. I'm on a campaign against these other things.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just when you come to those differing opinions, I just don't know how you could come to the conclusion of God when you are being open and honest about it and you're not being fundamentalist. To me, it's weird to be a believer just because you have this problem. with your feelings because you have a problem with reconciling your feelings with what you actually see. So you just say, okay, I can accept all the facts, but I still believe in God because it makes me feel comfortable.
I think it's fundamental to the human ego. It's about the surviving self.
Well,
I mean, you can't say that you have a soul that's going to survive forever if you don't posit a force outside of the natural realm that's going to make that possible. So I think it's a natural conclusion to the desire to live forever and the fear of death.
That's wishful thinking, yeah.
Well, I'm
It is wishful.
going to bring on Eric Reagan, which is ray gun.
40 millimeter ray gun?
Yes.
All right.
Hi.
I really am going to hate that I have to do that stupid thing.
What thing?
The whole audio thing.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. It's okay. It was only for...
Hello, Aaron Watt's twin.
How's it going?
Good.
What's up, man? Fellow bearded Homo sapien, hell yeah. Oh my god, I'm so jealous. I used to be... Let's kick him off. Can we please kick him off so I can
Why?
all again?
Yeah. You're
Bye.
not the epic bearded man anymore, realistic.
So what's up, man? Let's hear your story.
My story? There's not all that much to tell, really. Well, here I am.
What are your ideas of the Bible? What do you think about it?
Other than that it's a steaming pile of crap. No, actually, there's a lot of history in there that is somewhat correct. A lot of it that it's a take on other people's history that's totally incorrect. If that makes any sense. Like we were talking about the Tower of Babel before. That's totally, that's the story of ziggurat that was built to Marduk by Nebuchadnezzar. When the Hebrews were, well, I should take that back. When a branch or part of what would eventually become the Israelites were in exile under Nebuchadnezzar, they would have seen that. And I'm trying to, how do I want to put this? That's where that story comes from. That whole Gehenna, and, you know, you guys all know that story, correct? I know Atheist Coffee, you would know that story, obviously.
Well, I'm not sure. Are you talking about the historical roots to the story outside of literal text?
Yes, the actual history as compared to the biblical history.
Well, no, my kind of theological bottleneck was in regards to Christian fundamentalism, a literal interpretation of the Bible. So that anybody who would have suggested that was mythological, that there was an actual historical account that was changed and made to be this story, I would have rejected that out of hand. So I really don't have an education per se in regards to those alternative historical views of biblical myth very, very much, very extensively.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say we're gonna have another guest on LaFay 1991, if I remember correctly, because he knows a pretty good amount about this topic too. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
You know, there's an interesting, first off, contradiction regarding that story in just the previous chapter.
Hello.
Genesis 10. I'm sure everybody's familiar with it, but
Pull it up anyways.
it talks about Japheth, Ham, and Shem, and all of their separate nations, and three or four different times it talks about all the different languages. Like it'll say, these were the descendants of Shem, identified by clan, language, territory, and whatnot. And then you get to chapter 11, and at the very beginning, it says, at one time, all the people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
And so that's pretty interesting.
You put the cunt in contradiction.
I think the Chinese, the Egyptians, the people in the Indus Valley, the people that were living in North America, the people that were living in Africa, all of those people would be, you know, quite interested to know that they were speaking the same language at that time.
Yeah, I mean that makes.
Well,
and Europe.
I say this to my fundamentalist family. I point this out that well, we know how languages evolved. We know the history of languages, and the Tower of Babel story is obviously myth. It's obviously myth. No, it isn't myth. They say, and they bristle at it. It's real. It's literal.
Yeah, because saying something real will make it real.
Mm.
But it's just
real.
The fact you know that languages don't exist. That is like, you know, we know that languages have evolved from Latin. We know that they change. We know that they're still changing. There are so many modern words that are used because of the age of the internet that I don't even fucking know what they mean. English is a changing language.
Yeah. Every language is evolving, yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
You say that to Christians, and you can really pwn them.
Yeah. You believe in evolution too.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not, I mean, with the fundamentalists, yeah, but with the people that are actually willing to listen, the idea isn't to pwn them, it is to get them to listen.
Yeah, I'm not really looking to show people up.
I used pwned as an example of a new
No, I know what you meant, but, I mean, sometimes I find that a lot of people will go too far and just generalize theists into one big group. And you're talking to someone that classifies himself as an anti-theist. I really don't like religion as a whole. I would like to see it gone. I think it does more harm than good, but there are a lot of people out there that aren't clinging onto it, you know, it's not their whole being or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, first of all, there are so many different denominations that depending on which one who you talk to, you get a completely different interpretation of the Bible. So it's very easy for them to claim strawman if you start talking about one thing and they say, "Oh, I don't believe that." So you have to be very careful. And first thing I do whenever I talk with Christians is or any believers really. Is I asked them precisely to describe what their faith is. And the other day I came face to face with a Presbyterian, and I had no idea what to say.
What's a Presbyterian exactly?
It's a. I looked it up after the fact because I had no idea. But
it's a mainstream Christian denomination, Presbyterianism.
Yes.
It's mainstream?
Yeah. It's a Protestant denomination.
Yes, and they're Calvinists, so they don't believe that they can
But they're usually pretty liberal. They're not really that fundamentalist. They're pretty casual.
Yes, they are. And then one thing is that they tend to not proselytize that much because they think that you're chosen by God. You don't decide to go to heaven. You're chosen by God to go to heaven. So, yeah, you have to do your research. You can't generalize.
An odd stance to take.
Do they still believe in free will?
When we talk about generalization, I mean, when we talk about theists, we're just talking about people who believe in God. When we're talking about issues like the Bible, specifically we can generalize all theists because all theists have their own take on the Bible. And when you try to marry up your contradictory ideals with the Bible, you're allowed to generalize. When you say, okay, so you say you believe in the Christian God, I mean, we're not talking about like Muslims or anything, but when we're talking about Christians, we could probably generalize Christians because they have competing ideology, and you can bring these things to them. So why is your ideology have to compete with the ideology of your fellow brethren?
That's something I usually say. I say, when they say, well, no, this is just what the Bible says. This is what God says. I said, well, 2 billion Christians disagree with you. I mean, in various different ways. I mean, what you're saying is your interpretation of what God says is the right one. And why should I believe you?
That brings up another point. There are always a lot of people always say, well, at least in the States, they'll say, well, this is an 80% Christian country. And then they'll go and say, well, those people aren't real Christians, especially the Protestant sects to the Catholics. The Catholics make up like 42% of the Christian population in this country. So if they're not real Christians, quit claiming that this is a majority Christian country.
Correct. You could say the same thing about Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses. Lots of people think that these are not real Christians, and in the end, people really think that their own denomination or actually at least a branch of Christianity is the correct one.
You know what I want to see? I want to see like someone. Never mind. I don't know where I'm going. It's kind of really abstract.
Wait. Oh, I want to see what Lewis has to say since he's been here long and he hasn't said a single thing. Lewis?
I was thinking about it, what you were saying, and I think it's funny you mentioned it. One of the things I say all the time is that the number one group of people, or the number one, I guess, demographic that claims that someone isn't, Christian is not, any other denomination or any other religion, but it's always other Christians. Oh, well, those aren't real Christians. The no true Scotsman fallacy comes up all the time, and someone mentioned, that they say, well, if these people aren't really Christian, then you have to stop this bullshit that this is a Christian country, because obviously it's not. And you have to stop saying that Christianity is the biggest religion on the planet, because obviously it's not. Apparently Islam is. So looks like we need to, if my take's right, then that means Islam wins.
Islam has the same problem, though. The Sunnis call the other branches of Islam not.
Well, I know that, but you'd have to expect that your average Christian would be smart enough to know that.
The thing about that is that if the punishment for apostasy in Islam wasn't death, if it was just getting into loud arguments with your families like it is with Christianity, then there would be just as many Islamic sects, because there's just as many differing opinions. That's how denominations begin. It's just differing opinions.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more than. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just trying to make my thought from earlier more concrete. What I want to see people do is actually, they pick, in certain denominations, they always pick a sermon. You always pick a sermon for a certain time in church. But I want to see, every single sect of Christianity just read the Bible front to back all the time. That's all they do. They don't even do a sermon. They just read the Bible, maybe like half the day and half the day commentary on all of it. They have people take notes on the most significant verses, and then there's commentary on all of it. And you'd see it faction even further. You'd see even more faction.
I was going to say the reason you can't do that is because there's always zealous crazies in your congregation. You have to preach in order to teach people how to think about passages. Otherwise, you're going to have people that are going to go out at midnight blowing trumpets at the moon and refusing to eat pork or. See, I know people like this. I'm not even making this up. Seriously, they were talking Feast of the Trumpets kind of thing. I mean, people they go nuts if they're not told.
Yeah, and this is why this is one of the main thing about the Catholic Church is you have to let the church interpret the scriptures. You can't interpret them by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Because then you might start asking questions.
Well, the biggest
You're not allowed to
mistake
do that.
the biggest mistake the Catholic Church ever made was to allow the lay people to get their hands on the Bible. Once they decided, well, yes, they did. They
Eventually.
It's okay. Eventually, they said, well, it's time for them to. It's okay now to translate the Bible into the common.
They did that
Once
reluctantly, I think.
Well, yeah, they did it
After the printing press and after the Bible was out there, because this like piracy now. If you can't beat them, join them. So I mean, before they were burning people at the stakes on piles of Bibles. So.
Of course, that's what religion has always done. They've always gone kicking and they've always had to be dragged, kicking and screaming in towards progress forever in everything. In to end slavery. They're doing it now to in gay marriage. And this is what I tell people all the time. That as soon as in a few years down the road, where gay marriage and being gay is not looked down as something god awful. They're going to be saying the same thing they do now when the issue of slavery comes up. They'll say the same thing about how, the Bible always condemns slavery, and the Bible is always against it. And who's ever typing, please, mute your mic or something.
Not me.
And,
by the way, that's absolutely true. And I have a great book here by Sikivu Hutchinson called, what's it called? The Moral Combat, and they do draw parallels between the feminist movement and the gay movement, and also the interracial marriage movement, and so on and so forth.
If I can finish my point really quickly. It's just that 50 years down the road, when homosexuals are seen as equal to everyone else, commonplace, they're going to be saying the same thing they do now. They're going to be like, the Bible was always okay with it. Jesus said to love everyone equally.
But the awesome thing about that is we've got the video evidence now. They're not going to be able to hide. They're not going to say, we never said that. We've got it all on video.
We have the documents about back in the day when they
it'll be their parents, and it'll be their denominations, and it'll be their churches. And we can say, your church and your pastors.
Yeah, but
we got them this time.
We still have the same thing. I mean, obviously not video, but, people back in the day, talking, writing justifications of how the Bible supported slavery and how it was okay to oppress black people. We still have that. I mean, obviously not.
You mean like the Curse of Ham and stuff?
Well, stuff like that, but, it's also just the Bible in general.
That was the Old Testament.
Well, yeah, exactly, and they'll say the same thing about gay marriage.
Except when it's in the New Testament, but anyway.
They're going to say the same thing about gay marriage, and then they're going to... Oops, cut out. I said they're going to say the same thing about gay marriage, and then they're going to write a whole new book called the newest New Testament.
No, the newest Testament. They'll have the newest, and the newer, the newest Testament, so there'll be two more.
Well,
actually, there is actually a
the
New
Mormons.
Testament.
The Mormons.
No, there's actually a book called the New Testament, and it's a recent book, and it's basically a compilation of new translations of the New Testament, and plus some more books coming from non-canonical.
The Apocrypha?
Yeah.
I don't talk bad about Mormons though, because Mormons, no lie, are some of the nicest people on the planet.
And their religion is the craziest.
Yeah, no one.
It's the craziest, but I can never get there's Mormon missionaries that come to my university campus, and they'll try to hey, have you heard about Mormonism? Shit like that. I just can never get into it with them. I can get into it with any other religion, but I can't get. They're just way too nice. I just can't find it in me to be no, you're wrong. Your religion is crazy. Or you're stupid, just because they don't come at you that way. It's just nice.
The best thing about the Mormon religion is that it's the only one, to my knowledge, that's been conclusively disproven through DNA evidence.
Yeah.
I love it. They're like North American Indians or the descendants or the lost tribe of Israel. They're lost Jews, and so we sequence their DNA and we're like, nope.
They're Asians. They're
not
actually
Jews.
Asians.
I feel like
yeah.
I think a lot of Mormons I think a lot of them are also just culturally Mormon. Most of them don't even believe it, but they just stick to it because they're afraid that they'll be disowned. I mean, I've talked to some of them. I say to them, well, what do you say about the fact that The founder of this religion, Joseph Smith, was a convicted fraud. And, and they say, well, yeah, he was, and he probably made most of it up, but it's still, nice to think about.
Well, yeah, it's like the South
It
Park
actually
episode,
said
right?
stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly like the
said
South Park
stuff like
episode.
that.
Exactly like that. They're nice people, but a little fucked up, the religion.
Well, you can tell them one thing, that their church, the organization, is terribly corrupted, just as much as the Catholic Church or more. For example, there's been one example is.
I wouldn't go that.
Yes.
And they're anti-gay.
Well, they're anti-gay, but they have not gone on crusades and killed people. We can't compare them to the Catholic Church yet.
Well, let me give you an example. Okay? Let me give you an example. So there's been a lawsuit, 5,000 people that are suing have sued the Mormon Church because they have been molested by the people inside the church.
Yeah, that's a human issue. It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yes.
Especially in sexual repressive systems.
Yes, but the problem is that the church has been, just like the Catholic Church has been doing, they've been hiding the guilty people. They've been protecting them, and of course, who pays the rapists' legal bills? The church.
Oh well, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the Mormon Church is not corrupt. I'm just saying that the Catholic Church has a history of doing way worse things than the Mormons.
Well, I mean, the Mormon Church is what's it called? What's it called? The Saints of Latter-day.
Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah. I just forgot the whole thing.
Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like they have not been around as long as the Catholic Church, obviously.
That's right.
So, and also, they haven't been a majority thing, I guess.
Well, they haven't had the opportunity outside of the rule of law. They haven't ruled the government, and so like whenever fundamentalism takes charge of a country, then horrible atrocities happen at the hands of the most rabid fundamentalists.
They do rule the Boy Scouts, though.
Who cares? Boy Scouts is such a stupid organization to begin with.
I mean, I was a part of it when I was a kid, but I didn't know it was that shit.
Same here.
Wait, what?
I was a part of the Boy Scouts, but I didn't know it was religious and shit. I was like.
The Mormons run Marriott hotels, and the Boy Scouts.
No. How was I supposed to know? I was 5 years old. I was a Tiger Scout. I was a Wolf Scout, and I was an Eagle Scout. And when I became a Boy Scout, I was like, okay, I'm done, because it was boring.
Well, I didn't even have any idea of the Boy Scouts. I wanted to join the Boy Scouts when I was a kid. I just never did, but I didn't know they were religious. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I
Are they
didn't
still
know either.
government funded? Does anyone know?
Yes.
Anyone know what?
That's really sad.
Government funds Boy Scouts?
How can you discriminate against an entire group of people and still be government funded for religious reasons?
Well, isn't it... Okay, wait. I'm having a problem here. It's a religious organization, or is it not a religious...
It's not a religious organization. However, it was pretty much started by religious people and with religious principles, but it is not technically a religious organization in that there is no worship and stuff, but they do practice things like other religions would in that they, the Boy Scouts of America do not allow atheists, they do not allow homosexuals, you have to believe in some form of deity to be a Boy Scout, but you cannot be an atheist openly and be a Boy Scout.
I'm just saying, isn't that if it's government funded, isn't that the government endorsing a religion?
That's the problem, though. The Boy Scouts is a kind of a government, since the government allows them to use their bases and stuff. They don't have to pay them. They don't have to do any of that shit.
Along the same lines, what bothered me the most about church this morning was that they're not content just to gather together and believe what they believe and talk about what they believe and get together with like-minded people. What they have to do is they have to set up boogeymen. And the boogeyman that was set up this morning was atheists. And like the atheists are their enemies. They're the ones that are standing in the way. They're the ones that are drawing people away and doing the devil's work. And it's like I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm your enemy? It's so weird.
And for me, it was secularism.
Keep your friends close, man.
Yeah. Most of them don't know I'm an atheist.
Well, you're on camera, you know that, right? So they'll find out.
If they can find the show.
By the way, change of topic. Anybody here did not read the whole Bible cover to cover?
No.
I have.
I have read
I
it.
have.
I've read it all the way through a couple times.
I've read it multiple times.
And I've memorized great portions of it.
Fuck.
That's what
written
made
books
me
on it.
lose my faith.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
just-
too.
Was when I actually read all of it.
Yeah, once
Same here.
I was raised as a pretty lukewarm Catholic. You know, my parents never really forced the Bible onto me or any of that shit. They just told me, you know, Jesus loved you, accept it, whatever. And I'm like, okay. And then once
You know, it's the
I
hardest.
actually went to Bible school, I'm like, wait, what the fuck?
I always tell people to read the whole Bible, not just parts of it, but the whole thing. And there's a quote, a very good quote by Isaac Asimov saying, properly read, the Bible is the most potent force for atheism.
Yeah.
And
And you know, it's also the hardest book to read that's ever been written.
Is it
What about
really?
the Quran?
See, I always thought.
Who quoted that?
To explain. I always thought it should be really easy to explain to like children because I remember, dude. Okay. Oh shit. There's this Bible verse. I read it yesterday. I didn't fucking understand it. I looked for an explanation of it. I didn't understand it. Like I forgot what it was, man. I looked for it yesterday. It was some parable by Jesus, and I was like, I don't know. You're talking about wheat falling to the ground. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about
The
where
corn of wheat fall to the ground and die, it abideth alone.
Ingersoll.
Yeah, that one. I don't fucking understand that parable. Not a lick.
No, not many Christians do either.
I looked to get an explanation, and the explanation didn't make any sense to me because of the words that were used. I like actually analyzed the words. They're just like, okay. Do you know what that is?
I think it means something along the lines of if you die, you know, if you die without God, you're basically dying alone, and you're gonna wither and bullshit like that. It's basically saying that without God, you're nothing, and that once you die, God lives. You're fucked.
It has to do, I think, with the seed, and you see a seed goes into the ground and it dies, but then it grows a tree. It's something to do with being born again.
Oh, the seed dies. But see, I was thinking, okay, well, if the seed dies, then the plant doesn't fucking grow.
No, I think it was a primitive understanding of.
Yeah, the funny
biology.
thing is, that you have to, wait, I mean, like, this is the weird thing. Did they know how food grows? I mean, that's the weird thing.
Yeah, but they didn't know what happened in the seed. They just knew it
It's
busted
magic.
open. It's magic, yes. God makes it grow. You look at the trees.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. I was, you know, that interesting thing, that argument that Christians bring up where they say,
Look at the trees.
well, look at everything around it.
Clouds.
The mountains the other day. and
No.
it has-
There was a guy.
Slacker, cut this off, man.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Make your point.
I was in the mountains the other day, and I was looking at this giant fucking mountain range that I was standing right in front of, and I was like, people attribute this to God, and they think that He gives a shit about what you do in your bedroom. I was like, this is insane. I was like, look at this vastness. You know, you don't even have to believe that the universe is vast to think that God cares about you. I mean, you can just use the vastness of Earth and just like sit there in awe of it and think that a deity cares about what meat you eat. It's insane.
And the amazing thing, the short-sighted thing is, they look around, they look at the trees. They like it's if it's a painting, like you're standing in a gallery and you're looking. Look at the painting. They say, look at the trees, as if, look at all this. Look, where do you think it came from? You know what? It came from a seed, which came from a tree, which came from a seed, which came from a tree, and each generation was different than the one before. Everything evolved. They can't see it.
There's your infinite regress.
It makes me so frustrated.
I've said this and can y'all understand me better now or something?
What's
Can y'all hear
that?
me okay? Can y'all hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
I've said this for some time, is that religion is ego disguised as humility. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at it in that way, I mean, what do all these people say? They say, oh, I'm so humble. Oh, I'm nothing to God. Except you still believe that some incredibly potent being who has who has much bigger things on his mind, I'm sure, like controlling the cosmos and shit
Cares
like that.
about your sex
Cares
position.
about you personally, and all these people, for example, that talk about how, oh, Jesus is coming back in my lifetime.
Yeah.
He said 1 billion dead people.
He's coming back. Oh, he's coming back any day now. Of course, he's going to want to meet me. It's going to happen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's always people from the first world that say this too. It's never third world, like starving kids and shit.
No.
Little teenage girls and
I relate
shit.
to that. I don't even know how you could hear if you're in an impoverished nation. I don't even know how
Wait, your mic just fucked
God
up.
did not want to slap somebody in the face. Because I was angry. I was angry with God just being a kid, just growing up, just listening to the ideas and thinking about just even qualities that the several different churches I went to attributed to God. Just thinking about, okay, well, why is my life like this, and how does this happen? And just being angry. I can't imagine being in a third world impoverished country with wearing pot bottles as shoes, and someone comes and tells you that God loves you.
You can accept all kinds of stuff. You can accept all kinds of stuff at the hands of God. You can accept that he's burning your loved ones forever. You can accept that he just took your child away and you're standing over her grave, and you can still love him. Job said, God giveth and God taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And you do that, and at the most horrible things happen to you, and the most horrible thoughts. Think about it. Somebody you love dearly dies, and you are sure God is burning them right now, and they're screaming. They're screaming in agony and burning alive right now. And they always will be. And you accept it, and you go on, and you accept all kinds of crap in religious belief.
Why would you do that to yourself?
You do it because you have to.
No.
This is so wrong. I guess I don't know if I'm different than all you. Did you all grow up religious, like all of you guys?
I have.
I think we're all pretty different in our experience. But I did. Most of us did, I think.
I didn't grow up religious. So to me, it's like a mental exercise to try to put myself in your place, because I never did that.
Yeah. Well, a huge system grows up around a simple belief, where you accept that there's a God and this God loves you, and you're like, oh, that's great, so I'm going to live forever in heaven. And then you go to church and you start learning things, and you learn what the Bible says, you learn different doctrines, and pretty soon, after years and years of study and being around other Christians and discipleship and memorization, you've got this huge monstrosity of belief that's like an absurd, a monument to the absurd. And you accept it all because it was all built on that first line, that first little foundation of just sign here, and we'll tell you what it's all about later on.
Let me give you an example, a concrete example. I've just learned last week that apparently in Japan there's no separate words for the color green and blue. So whenever you see something green or blue, you call it blue. They're all blue. Everything's blue.
Correct. It's A.
Sorry?
Correct. It's A. AI.
Okay, you know about that. So now, it means that you have a whole civilization over there in Japan that's basically colorblind because they've been programmed by the language to be.
That's weird.
Now, for me, I was born. I had believing parents. I had a very, very devout Christian, a Catholic father. I was instructed in a Catholic church. High school, same thing. I went to the Boy Scouts, which had Catholic teachings. It had a Catholic priest come over once in a while. I was bathing in it. I was absolutely only exposed to Catholic teachings all the time. And to me, one day I discovered that there are other religions, and I could not believe it.
I want to talk about it if we could. I want to talk about what we know about hell in the Bible, because you're always talking Atheist Coffee about writhing in eternal agony and stuff, and I understand that there might be, but they're not. See, this is the problem with the Bible. Nothing is very explicit. I think that's kind of a. I think. That's
actually, in the New Testament, hell is very explicit. Not so much in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Luke 16. Jesus talks specifically about hell and what exactly it's involved with, and Revelation 20 is the final judgment, where actually it says death and hell are cast into the lake of fire, which probably is meaning everybody who was in hell gets cast into a worse hell or something. Oh, and so it says, and Jesus is always saying, where the worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched. The idea is that suffering never ends. The burning is eternal. Revelation 20 says that the devil and his angels will be tormented day and night forever and ever. And that's where the unbelievers who die are going to be sent. They're going to be sent to the lake of fire that's meant to be an eternal punishment. It's what the passage says. And there are a lot of people who don't, who for one reason or another don't accept the eternal hell. But I think the Bible, the New Testament, lays that out very clearly.
Yes.
It's funny because I was wondering from my personal experience. My stepmom is a deist. I actually explained her theology better than she could. I explained to her that she was a pantheist, and she was just like, "Yeah, I'll go with that now." But she believes that hell happens on Earth, and that was like a big allegory, like a fire kind of thing. It's a big allegory to you make your own choices in life and you suffer through life. But she believes in some sort of afterlife, and my dad also doesn't think hell is eternal. Because I was talking about that, I was like, "How can you rectify that?" And he can't.
I was talking to my dad, and he is a fundamentalist, independent Baptist preacher, and he is earnest in his belief. He is not hypocritical at all, and he has always believed what the Bible says about the eternality of hell. And I was talking to him about that and saying that the moral dilemma, that you wouldn't send me there, but God would send me there, and there is room, even in his mind, that maybe there's something else there. Maybe it isn't eternal, and because it's something that the human mind has a hard time grasping. That kind of punishment. Just think about that. It's the worst thing you could ever imagine. You can't imagine anything worse than burning forever in that kind of situation.
It's so interesting. It's so crazy. You guys know about the 7 deadly sins and how they're differentially punishable, right?
Yeah, that's a Catholic thing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a Catholic. It's so fucking, man. It's weird. It's weird. Like, why did they posit these things? I don't even know how it started. I don't even to get society to conform or.
So the other day,
one of the things.
Go ahead.
One of the things that really got me questioning my faith was the fact that the Old Testament is so vague on hell, and there's the word Sheol mentions 66 times, I believe, in the Old Testament, and in the King James Version, 33 of those, I believe, are translated as hell. But in each and every verse, it's very vague. The literal translation of the word is the grave. And if you were to translate every single one as hell, then it would indicate that both the righteous and the wicked go there. Everybody went there.
It's like you saw my video about hell. I made a video on the topic, and this is exactly what I said.
Yeah. Judaism and Christianity took these terms from the surrounding cultures. Christianity took Hades and Tartarus, and Sheol and Gehenna were old Canaanite and pagan ideas. And these there were kind of 4 ideas of hell in the text and the underlying words. in the Bible, and one was Tartarus, like the bottomless pit, and Hades was like the hell as we know it, Sheol being the grave, and Gehenna being that the dump outside the city where the bodies go.
Which is what I was when I came in. That's what I was talking about. Like the true Exodus happened in at that ziggurat that I was mentioning. Under Nebuchadnezzar, there was never a true exodus out of
Egypt. There was never wandering in the wilderness, never crossing the Red Sea.
There wasn't archaeological
because Sinai. There wasn't a conquering of Canaan.
I know. What would have happened if there was an actual people being held in Egypt, and they tried to come? If they tried to come out of Egypt at that. They would have been fleeing into more Egyptian-controlled territory. It's like, if you picture it, like Egypt here, well, I'll do it here, like Egypt here, and crossing up here. At the time, everything up here was controlled by Egypt. So they'd have been fleeing into more Egyptian-controlled territory. You can look it up for yourselves. I mean, I can't.
Of course,
I just wanted to finish.
Go ahead.
Finish the thought.
I'm sorry, man.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to finish the thought that the thing that really got me questioning was that all these thousands of years, all they had was the Old Testament, apparently, and according to our fundamentalist beliefs. And so hell is such an important topic. It's something that we absolutely need to know about if, all this is true as we believed. And all of these years, they knew hardly anything about it. It didn't hardly mention it at all, if at all.
It's because God forgot. He forgot to mention it.
And I thought, such an important topic, if it was real, then God should have mentioned it. He should have made it very explicitly clear what it was and how you go there.
Well, maybe he didn't want his
very beginning.
Maybe he didn't want his chosen people to know.
So yeah, that really sent me for a whirlpool. Sent me off course and really got me studying, delving into the Bible. And
there are lots and lots of Jews who don't believe in hell as we know it.
Well, the Jews never believed in an afterlife, from what I've learned, and that the whole afterlife thing was from the Greeks.
Yeah, and
you
then
find
also
that in ancient Jewish eschatology.
Wait, what?
If you study ancient Jewish eschatology, then you find out a lot about that they really didn't have a concept of an afterlife. They had a concept of a resurrection of the actual body, but not a spiritual afterlife.
And then you have the Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses and lots of sects who don't believe in hell.
God, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of that. I don't. That's funny that I don't focus on other religions because I straight up. I didn't know that how many sects don't believe in hell. That's crazy.
I mean, if there were still Greeks around, they believe in a type of hell. If you know what I mean by Greek.
Yeah. Well, damn it, I had a thought and it just went.
What?
I said I had a thought and it just went. Well, I was gonna say a lot of like Orthodox and Gnostic sects. They still follow the old Paulian, Marcionian tradition of Jesus Christ not being a man, and not having ever lived on the earth, but having been crucified at the beginning of time, and being crucified, I think it was on the third level of heaven by demons.
Fuck.
It's all just pulled out of their ass. My
I know.
God.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Fuck.
If you go back...
Jesus never lived on Earth, so how the fuck Do any of you even know this?
What?
Well,
I mean,
because I
realistic.
studied-
Realistic. It's. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but it's like, how did the Greeks come up with all the thing about Hades and all that other stuff? Like, it's like the same question.
Well, that's mythology, and it's
Well,
just it's
obviously.
people. See, before science, before we had any idea, what shit was, we just made shit up,
Yeah.
and there you go. Religion, mythology. There you go.
Straight
You
off.
have to
people's
have
asses.
something to believe.
You know what's really telling is if you start at the beginning of the Bible if you just wipe your mind blank of anything that you thought you knew about Christianity, and you just be this person who pretend that you didn't know, you didn't grow up in church, didn't learn what they taught you, and just read the Bible from cover to cover, you would get a completely different Christianity than the Christianity that we're taught.
Yeah, that's
In the
what
churches.
I get from it.
Yeah, you do.
Because
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say you could probably finish your point because it's probably more relevant.
No, it's in
as
my mind already.
That's my
berated, you-
funniest thing that I prayed for when I was a pantheist. It's really funny because I know Christians pray for it, and they always say it. It's in that it's in that one prayer, that really famous prayer that they always say at like every fucking
Lord's
church.
Prayer.
Yeah, the Lord's Prayer. That's
Lord's.
I
Our
always
Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
yeah. I always used to pray that God's will be done, and I never actually thought about it. I was just, like when I was a pantheist, I thought it was inevitable that God's will would be done because God is the universe, so the universe is going to do what it's going to do, right? So I used to sit there and I'd pray, and it was just so silly because I was like, I'd think about it, and I'd be like, well, why am I praying if it's going to happen anyway? And I remember sitting there at night and being like, well, why am I doing this? And I couldn't find an answer. Like, for some reason I wanted to do it, and I couldn't figure it out. It was just so silly.
Actually, I think that this part of the prayer is true, but you have to remove the apostrophe.
Wait, which part of the prayer?
God's will be done.
Which part?
God's.
the gods will
Oh,
be done.
God's will be
You gotta
done.
change the apostrophe to at the end. The gods will be done. Yeah.
Anyway, in French, we don't have that pun, though. So.
Someone in the chat section said something really interesting. They said prayer can be used for good self-reflection and introspection. I don't think that's what prayer is.
Unbeknownst to the believer, it is really. I mean, it's all self-projection, anyways. So their beliefs are very telling on who they really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think there's a couple different kinds of prayers. One is just reflective, and could be just called meditation. And then there's like wishful thinking types of prayers as well. That's a different story. That's useless.
Yeah, we're totally digressing, but it's okay because I'm interested in it. I actually went on this thing because I went through this Zen phase, and I was trying to I was reading a lot of Buddhist teachings and following a lot of Zen Buddhism and their teachings, and I came to this point in which I was just like, after I fell out of that, because I believed meditation was this weird thing where you could have this ethereal experience and stuff, and then I went to atheism, and I was such a hard skeptic, and I was just like, for a long time I was thinking like, nah, fuck that, meditation doesn't do shit, and then I actually looked it up, and I don't know if studies have been done on prayer this way. I would say like group prayer is probably not the same, but if prayer is like what the person God is nowhere is talking about, is self-reflection, then it might have, because meditation actually lowers your blood pressure. There are actual medical benefits to meditating, but I mean, there's conclusive way to meditate or anything like that. You know?
Well, the thing about Zen meditation is all it is an intense focus on the now. You're not, it's not spiritual in any sense. It's not projecting images from your mind. People have this weird idea that and I guess there's a lot of occultic Buddhism out there, but people have a weird idea that it's some spiritual thing, and it's not. It's as atheistic as it goes.
Dead air, Strife Bear, do something about that.
Do again? What? Sorry, I'm a little over it. What did you say? I'm sorry, I'm being a horrible moderator today.
We have a Christian in the comment section.
And?
Well, I'd point that out. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I know there. Yes, I'm aware. And what did you bring up?
So, is the guy in the chat? Is your name God is now here, or God is nowhere?
No, that's not a Christian. That's wit.
God is now here. That's great.
Because it can go both ways, you know.
He's gonna be like, "Oh shit, damn it!"
I thought it was nowhere. Honestly,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's an atheist. So
Yeah,
that's not
wit.
the Christian I was talking about. It's Chaotix 207.
Oh yeah, I'll invite him in. He wants to come on?
I don't know. We should ask him.
Chaotic, do I have you on Skype? Because I think I do. I'm not sure.
I'm gonna call him God is now here from now on.
No, I don't. I do? What do I have you as?
Am I the first one to notice?
Is that
Yeah, I think
what?
so.
Yeah,
No.
no.
Chaotix is not wit, but wit is God is nowhere. That's wit.
As a poetry geek,
Cleveland,
I'd
I
like to
don't see
read
you on-
Emily
online right
Dickinson's
now.
poem on prayer.
Are you on Skype,
It's
Cleveland?
real short.
He's a hardcore theist. That Wittgensteinian there.
Yeah, God is now here.
Что у нас есть?
You ready?
Hey, God is nowhere. Am I the first one to notice this? That your name can be interpreted both ways?
Cleveland, you're not online, so I can't invite you.
Someone came online.
That's wit.
That's weird.
He's been Wit, we're not gonna. Oh, he's logging in now. So give Cleveland a few seconds.
He's gonna come over. Strife, you gotta have to have him on the after show because we're gonna end the show.
Yeah, I understood that. We only got 5 minutes, approximately almost. But we could talk to him for 5 minutes, then we'll end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get a real good
We
debate.
started
and
a
then
few minutes
cut it off.
late, so if we go into a little bit.
That's a Christian. That's a good way. That's what we gotta do. We just gotta put them in gotcha moments, and then when they give us answers, we just gotta cut them off.
No, that's stupid.
That's the real honest way to debate. That's what we atheists do there. We're all about censorship.
I'd
Yeah.
like to read a short little poem by Emily Dickinson.
Awesome.
While we wait, go ahead.
Prayer is the little implement through which men reach, where presence is denied them. They fling their speech by means of it in God's ear, if then he hear. This sums up the apparatus comprised in prayer. I think that about sums it up. I like that, where presence is denied them.
See, I'd probably have to read the poem myself because I'm just not very good at understanding it without looking at the words myself. One thing about poetry.
Okay, Cleveland's on. No Cleveland show jokes, please.
Well, add him in.
Poszła? Oh, przyszła.
Hello.
Oh, he's not. It's calling, but he. Hello, Cleveland.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey,
Welcome to the Lion's Den.
You have to allow the video straight.
Oh yeah. No,
No,
I can't allow the video because it says some people on the Skype call have Skype 5.0 or higher. A need to have.
All right.
All right, so where are we going with this?
I don't know. I'm here listening to y'all. I'm just sitting back.
So what do you think of our little debate then?
I don't know. Are y'all? How can you debate yourself? But
It's not a debate technically.
Not technically.
what's the subject? What are y'all talking about?
Talking about the Bible.
Well, that's the main thing. But the show's gonna end in a few minutes. So, would you like to stay on for the after show?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Well,
Also to note, is a just a note, is an axiom a basic belief?
An axiom?
Imagine
Come
type
on.
that into Google.
Well, I mean an axiom like the universe exists.
нет, не смотришь, как ты хочешь. Нет, не смотришь. Тебе не видно.
Axiom. Like I said, from what my understanding, what an axiom is just something that people just understand to be already known. You know. So, I don't know. That's
I think that an axiom is something that's just not in dispute.
yeah. It's like a ball.
Well, I mean, it's more than that. An axiom is the foundation of where all of the rest of knowledge comes from. It's
Foundational axiom. Right?
it's inherently true for the fact that the opposite would be nonsensical.
Yes.
Something that has to be true.
Okay.
For instance, I exist. If I say I don't exist, then I'm contradicting the obvious. I mean, I don't exist doesn't make any sense because I'm saying I don't exist, so I must exist.
Well, I could contradict you and say that you don't exist, but I don't think you're gonna really agree with me. But
No, because who are you talking about then? You're
yeah.
saying a subject I'm
Just
not.
by disagreeing, you're proving
could we
the
possibly have final statements before we go in the after show? Because we have 1 minute. So, one sentence from each of you.
Who goes first?
Mod Hard or Strife?
Go ahead. Eric.
I guess my final statement is it was nice to finally meet those that I have not been able
Nice to
to
meet you.
meet before. So that's pretty much it.
Nice to meet you.
Atheism TV.
Well, as a closing statement, I would just like to say that the Bible is a horrible piece of literature, and it's full of contradictions and blood and slavery and so on and so forth, atrocities. And I wish all Christians would read it cover to cover. That would help.
Realistic Nihilist.
I just want. I don't know. I just wish that we had a Christian on the topic in the beginning of the show to tell us their opinion, because I'm not going to be able to be in the after show, and so you guys are just going to have to let me know how it goes with the theist we got on here now and what he thinks of the Bible.
Atheist Coffee.
Well, imagine you're born 3,000 years ago, and I mean, what did they know about the universe? Well, nearly nothing. And so, well, you need explanations. And so the priests and the prophets give them, and they write them down, and these things are handed down. And these days we have explanations for things: why the sun goes across the sky, why people get sick, why things happen. We can tell. But still, people rely on these stories that the ancients used to assuage their wonder and their questions and their fear. And we have better answers now, and better answers than in a book that promotes homophobia and the oppression of women and the beating of children. And yeah, I think secular morality is much better than biblical morality, and I could probably go on for an hour, so I'll stop.
Pipe Smoking Skeptic, and then we're going to end the show.
Yeah, I'd like to end by saying that the Bible is still, whether or not you believe in it or not, as, you know, the literal Word of God, it is a very big influence in the culture of different parts of the world, especially the United States. And so I think everybody should read it and become familiar with it, and read it with a critical mind, cover to cover, and so that they can counter these beliefs, so that they can point out the flaws and the inconsistencies.
Okay, and this is the after show. Tune in next week for more of your viewing pleasure.